Hello and welcome to Agenda 2030. I am Toyin Nkamiang John. In the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, sustainable financing, strategic policies, and impact programs are major requirements. Against this background, reinforcing government and stakeholders' commitment towards financing the SDGs in Nigeria has become more expedient. On the program today, we will focus on the efforts by Nigeria to come up with a sustainable financing mechanism tagged Integrated National Financing Framework (INFF) for sustainable development. After the news on innovative implementation of the SDGs from around the world with Adesuwa Osuyi. To stay with us.
Hello friends, do you know that coronavirus, otherwise known as COVID-19, is real? It has infected millions of people globally, with thousands of deaths recorded.
COVID-19 can infect anybody, old or young, rich or poor, even children like us.
Coronavirus can spread from person to person through coughing, sneezing, and touching, as well as from contaminated surfaces. But we can beat this if only we obey and observe the various government guidelines. So wash your hands regularly for at least 20 seconds or use hand sanitizer when necessary. Observe good personal and respiratory hygiene. Sneeze and cough into your bent elbow. Avoid touching your face with unclean hands. Use face masks. Maintain social distancing and avoid crowded areas. Yes, stay at home. Stay safe to stay alive.
And we will all celebrate again next time.
To boost domestic energy infrastructure, create cleaner energy, as well as commercialize the country's abundant gas resources, thereby deepening indigenous energy market, President Muhammadu Buhari has flagged off the construction of the $2.8 billion Ajaokuta Kaduna Kano 614 kilometers natural gas pipeline project. The project, when completed, will be Nigeria's biggest domestic gas transmission infrastructure, providing stimulus to Nigeria's industrial growth. The pipeline will be delivered by a combination of indigenous and international engineering firms. COVID-19 has increased demands for respiratory machines across the globe. To this end, Mercedes Formula One engineers working with medics from London's University College Hospital produced a respiratory mask for coronavirus patients called a continuous positive airway pressure machine. The breathing aid blows oxygen directly into the lungs, preventing patients from being hooked to a ventilator, as well as avoid processes involving passing a tube down patients' airways. It took less than 100 hours to produce the first unit, producing up to 1,000 machines a day. The company has gone ahead to publish the design free online for other manufacturers to copy and reproduce so as to help patients suffering from COVID-19. To help encourage cycling, keep carbon-emitting cars off roads, as well as reduce overcrowding in buses and public transport systems where it is hard to practice social distancing, France is giving its citizens €50 towards bicycle repairs. In addition, the country will pay for cycling lessons for citizens willing to learn to cycle. According to its Minister for Environment, Elisabeth Borne, France has a $22 million plan to repair bicycles, install more bike parking spaces, and finance cycling coaching sessions. Borne said the government will also boost an existing program for employers to cover up €400 of travel costs of staffs who cycle to work. It is believed that encouraging more cycling could reduce the risk of a second wave of COVID-19. As the need to lead healthy lifestyles as well as save the planet rises, people around the world have come up with creative trends to help safeguard the planet while getting in shape and staying fit. One of such trends is struggling. Struggling, which began with divers in Australia, involves collecting plastic bags, straws, and discarded fishing lines from water bodies while deep-sea diving in an attempt to clean up the ocean. Another is plugging. This involves picking trash off streets while jogging. Pluggers have been spotted in Thailand, Paris, and Sweden, where the trend started. It is said that humans will generate 3.4 billion tons of waste by 2050.
As the world currently looks towards a global economic reset post-COVID-19, there is need to scale up efforts towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Although the Nigerian government has been making significant progress towards integrating the SDGs into national plans, the current state of public finance could pose a huge challenge. To surmount the challenge, the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs, in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, the UNDP and other stakeholders, have kicked off the process of adopting a financing framework with an Inception INFF workshop for sustainable development. Here's a report.
Nigeria has formally kicked off the process of designing and implementing an integrated national financing framework, INFF, for financing national development priorities and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The move underscores the country's commitment to taking a holistic, data-driven and long-term approach to the development of a financing strategy for the SDGs. It follows recent steps, including the development of an SDG baseline performance indicator database and the domestication of an integrated SDG tool for data analysis and modeling. The Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning will drive the government-led process in partnership with the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Sustainable Development Goals, and with support from the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, and the European Union. The multi-stakeholder core working group in guiding the process also includes the Central Bank of Nigeria, Nigeria Governors Forum, Budget Office of the Federation, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, African Development Bank, ISDB, as well as the Private Sector Advisory Group on SDGs, among others. The Integrated National Financing Framework, INFF, is a United Nations tool to support countries in operationalizing the agreements of the Addis Ababa Action Agenda for financing the SDGs. Despite challenges which have been significantly amplified by the COVID-19 pandemic, the government's commitment remains firm in ensuring resources are allocated effectively towards achieving progress. The health and socio-economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic implies that spending needs have increased, while revenue streams continue to shrink. Realizing the vision of the SDGs, therefore, requires mobilizing a diverse range of public and private resources. Hence, the urgency of a coherent and integrated financing framework. The INFF will strengthen linkages between national planning and financing policies and enable the government to manage resources more efficiently, thereby bridging the SDG financing gap. During the Nigeria INFF Inception Workshop held on 30th June 2020, Dr. Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, reiterated that the government will continue to focus on designing and implementing proactive and people-oriented policies and plans aimed at ensuring an inclusive, sustainable and resilient economy. The Honorable Minister affirmed that the INFF will support Nigeria in moving towards and sustainably financing a future where no citizens are left behind. The minister emphasized that the INFF is not intended to replace existing financing policies and frameworks, but instead to provide an opportunity for an in-depth analysis to identify areas for improvement, synergy, and critical gaps, with a focus on creating an integrated framework.
Successful implementation of the SDGs in Nigeria requires that we urgently mobilize domestic resources and that we be more innovative in addressing financing gaps, while also fostering collaboration at the national and regional levels between government and the private sector, and also with our international development financial partner institutions. Nigeria's SDG strategy has focused on early domestication, integration and implementation through subnational mainstreaming, interagency coordination, and institutional strengthening. We have been guided by the principle that government ownership, along with the strong public policies targeted at increasing and ensuring optimal use of domestic resources, are necessary for financing and implementation of the SDGs, as espoused in the Addis Ababa Action Agenda and underscored during the 2018 New General Assembly high-level meeting on financing the SDGs for development. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the SDGs have been incorporated into new and existing strategic plans and budgetary frameworks of the Nigerian government. The core strategic objectives outlined in the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan mapped directly into the 17 SDGs and goals and targets. Specific and direct focus on education, on health, on environment, on women and social development, on youth development, on agriculture, and also on water resources. Additionally, the ERGP and the recently launched Economic Sustainability Plan both stress the need for investment in our people through the development of jobs, human capital development, implementation and scaling up of the social investment measures. All these are the principles at the heart of the SDG agenda.
Also speaking at the virtual event, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs, Princess Adejoke Orelupe Adefulure, noted that as Nigeria has been working closely her national and international partners to establish institutional frameworks that will guarantee effective implementation of the SDGs. She therefore expressed the hope that the INFF will further strengthen commitment of policymakers, development practitioners, and captains of industry in support of the achievement of the SDGs in Nigeria.
2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development presents an ambition, complex and interconnected vision that countries around the world are committed to working towards. Realizing this vision will require mobilizing the diverse range of public and private resources to contribute to the sustainable development. The Addis Ababa Action Agreement Agenda, which outlined a framework financing the 2030 Agenda, called for integrated approaches to finance that and are driven towards the national level. Countries face a number of challenges in developing integrated approach to finance the SDGs. Realizing the scale of public funds and private resources require and maximizing the social, economic, and environmental dimension of the 2030 Agenda that presents a range of challenges from managing complex financing instruments in designing and implementing effective policies and cooperating with a diverse range of actors.
Private sector representatives, development partners, as well as other government officials present at the workshop echoed the timeliness of this initiative and declared their commitment to working collaboratively.
The first is the recognition that if we're going to attain these SDGs, we will have to recognize the importance of collaboration first between the government and all our development partners, but also recognizing the very important role that private capital will play in that process. And what makes that pretty clear to us is that this year's budget, which is Nigeria's largest ever budget, which is somewhere around $28 billion, really represents only a small fraction of GDP in our economy, somewhere around 7%. It makes us all recognize that the government is only a small part of the economy, and we're going to have to mobilize not just domestic capital, but also substantial international investment capital, using all of the tools that are available to us in financing markets, including the capital markets, to do so. It will require an agenda for sustainable investment across the board. It will require an agenda for domestic resource mobilization, as well as also how we begin to convert illicit financial flows and turn them and use them for good around the financing of the SDGs.
The ICB Group stands ready to support its member country and Nigeria in their development effort by aligning the bank's development model capitalize on opportunities for growth and prosperity in the global market. This new modus operandi, known as making market work for development, revolves around how development can be reoriented to drive competitiveness of strategic industries connected to the global market through global value chain.
Ready to do whatever we can to support this initiative. It is much needed, as it is in many other countries. Basically, the reason is that Nigeria's development financing needs to meet the SDGs, but also just in terms of its national aspirations, far beyond what the government itself through its fiscal resources can provide. Hence, the need for the integration, for thinking about where support from international partners, as well as mobilizing resources from the private sector, non-governmental sources, becomes so important.
Now, for Nigeria, we completed this assessment earlier this year. The report was published just a couple of weeks ago. And our estimate shows that Nigeria will need additional spending of 18% of GDP, a level that is actually higher than the low-income country average, to meet SDG goals in these 5 areas. Over 40% of these additional needs are for education sector, where both enrollment and education quality will need to improve significantly if Nigeria is to transform its massive young population into human capital.
I would like to assure you that African Development Bank stands ready through our country strategy framework for Nigeria over the next 5 years to invest about $5 billion in country. The strategy is also very much focused on co-financing opportunities and the need to leverage other development partners and the private sector to help deliver strong impact and deliver on the SDGs.
Other participants who spoke at the event include the Minister of State, Budget and National Planning, Clement Agba, and representatives from the UNDP, European Union, Nigeria Governors Forum, Budget Office of the Federation, as well as the Private Sector Advisory Group on SDGs, among others.
Prior to the pandemic, it was a common knowledge that development financing to achieve the SDGs by 2030 was a significant challenge. Nigeria's integrated SDG simulation model estimated a financing gap of 125 trillion naira. Today, the huge and the economic impact of COVID have made SDG financing even more challenging. There is now a high risk a decade of gains made in human and social development, such as education, equality, poverty reduction, will be reversed. This crisis is already dramatically impacting key financing flows, such as remittance, foreign direct investment, tax and non-tax revenues. If we do not tackle this challenge now, this can have a significant impact on the future of sustainable development agenda in Nigeria, in Africa.
It's really essential that all stakeholders team up and make the necessary resources and expertise available to carry this forward.
Yeah, the conceptualization and implementation of development agenda requires a significant change in how key actors operate so that they deliver on the promise of a holistic approach. Therefore, the impact of Nigeria's new development plans should be most visible at the level of implementation and operations. Several challenges exist in integrating diverse sources of financing for sustainable development, making it imperative to tailor financing solutions across sectors. In this regard, therefore, our already developed ISDG simulation model seeks to support the alignment of the new National Development Strategy to the SDGs and development of the Integrated National Financing Framework. Since integrated national financing frameworks are key to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, we must do everything possible to leverage diverse financing sources and improve data and diagnostics to identify and fill financing gaps.
We, in the budget office, share the aspirations of moving Nigeria towards attainment of the SDGs by 2030. It's a tall, a tall order. It's a tough task, and we are just 10 years away. And when you quantify the resources that will be required, the task will seem even more daunting. And therefore, every initiative that has the capacity to, be able to improve the flow of resources towards meeting these SDG goals is commendable.
Nigeria will continue to support the United Nations in all its efforts, including the attainment of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I thank you.
Agenda 2030, showing on this channel. Agenda 2030, leaving no one behind.
Remember, you can always watch this program and other episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channels on youtube.com/FreshNewsTV and youtube.com/Agenda2030TV. You can also watch the program live on Facebook. Just log on to www.facebook.com/FreshNewsNG and www.facebook.com/Agenda2030TV. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Agenda 2030 TV on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Remember to drop your comments and share with your contacts. Do use the hashtag Agenda 2030 and hashtag Agenda 2030 TV. And that is how much we can take on the program this week. Do keep a date with us next week for another insightful episode. I am Tony Nkamiang John. Thank you for staying with us.